chicken or egg problem. It's a good title to it, but really what we're talking about is how do you get more acceleration in your marketplace. Okay, so it might be at the beginning of your marketplace or it might be later. But instead of talking generally about stuff, what I always like to do is talk about the exact tactics, right? So I've invested in over 60 marketplaces. I run a venture firm called NFX with a guy named Pete Flint who founded Currier, which is a marketplace in the real estate space. And a guy named Iggy Levy-Weiss in Israel, sort of the top investor in Israel. We've got a $150 million fund. We invest $1 to $2 million in marketplace companies and other things with network effect businesses. And so over the years, I've invested about 60 marketplaces. And so every company, whether they fail or succeed, we get to learn tactics. Right? We're right there on the ground working with the companies. Prior to this, I founded 4 venture-backed companies that were successful. So I made thousands of mistakes myself and did a few good things myself. And so I'm standing in front of you as if I know what I'm talking about. Gary knows I don't. Okay, here we go. Let's solve the chicken or egg problem. Let's jump into it. I've got 19 tactics for you. You may or may not recognize some of these as you go. Okay. The first thing is you've got to figure out which is the hardest side, and you've got to get that side first. So let's talk about outdoorsy, right? RV rentals. They looked and they saw that there was a lot of demand for RV rentals, but only 50,000 RVs to rent in the United States. So the first thing they focused on was getting those RVs on the platform. Once they got those on the platform, the demand just came. It just came right in. Same thing with Catalan, right? Or actually the opposite. These guys have tons of consultants, the supply side, but very few on the demand side, which are the corporations who are shelling out 10 grand, 30 grand for these consultants. Okay, so if they can get the demand side, if they can embed themselves with the demand side, then they're going to be able to, the consultants will just show up. Right? So these are the, and some people will say, oh, the supply side is the only important side of the marketplace. Well, they haven't actually invested in 60 marketplaces. They don't understand the marketplaces are each different. Okay? And you have to figure out which is the hard side, and then you got to go get that hard side first. Okay? Second thing, appealing tightly to one niche within that. So let's talk about Amazon, right? They appealed tightly to books at the beginning, and then they started expanding from that. Or eBay, right? They started at Beanie Babies, or they said they started with Pez dispensers. That was a fabrication. But they started with Beanie Babies, and then they very quickly went through the other groups, but they would focus on each group. And there's a legend that Pierre Omidyar quit the company when they had a big whiteboard, and they had 100 categories across, and they had 100 power sellers in each category. He put the cap on the top of the pen, put it down, and he quit, and he hired Meg to run the company for him. Because they had started with one, and then they went after each niche, focusing on a niche. Talk about Uber. They started with the black cabs, right? Rich bros getting black cabs in San Francisco. That's a big market, right? Not. Well, it turns out it is, because then they had a chance to copy Lyft. Okay? And then turned around that copy, that clone, in 30 days. All right? LinkedIn. How did LinkedIn start? Reed's friends. He sent out email to 4,000 of us. We all signed up. And then our friends in New York wanted to join because we were on. And he started a really tight little niche of his friends that he knew. Okay? Same thing with Zuck, right? He started with just Harvard. So focusing on a niche. Figuring out who in your community. And you have to think about careful user sequencing. This is what you should talk to your teams about. Let's think carefully about the user sequencing on the marketplace as we grow. Right? Marketplaces are difficult, guys. They take 7 years typically, more, 10. And they're hard to fly. It's hard to fly the plane because you have to be careful about your user sequencing, among other things. All right. And when we talk about these key users, the phrase we always use at NFX is find the white-hot center. Who's at the center of your community? Okay, the hottest white-hot center. And everyone says, oh, but if I just focus on that, it's not big enough. The VCs won't invest. All right? Well, from my perspective, what you're looking for is to create that white-hot center to get something interesting going. So, for instance, if you've got a big marketplace and you're trying to connect them, and you're not getting a lot of traction, you need to find that white-hot center, that little niche group that's going to really care the most. And then you've got to find the white-hot center on the other side, and then connect them. And I remember when Sar Gur had invested in Top Hatter, and it was a really small community. And I think Top Hatter is presenting today, and they're doing 500 or 600 million in GMV or something. Right? But when they first started, SAR said to me, he said, there's something interesting going on in that community. Because those guys had figured out tight little niches within either side of the marketplace, and they had activated those small groups. And so SAR, being a great investor, could smell it. He was like, there's something going on. Fast forward 6 years later, and they've got this giant company that should be worth more than $1 billion in the company. All right. Number 3. There's another tactic, which is just to subsidize the most valuable niche on one side or the other. Just pay them, right? Everyone, we know that Uber would pay the initial, in every city, they pay the initial drivers to just drive around. We're going to give you a flat fee, it's your salary for the month, just drive around, always be available, so that whenever the demand side comes on, there's always someone there, and they don't get disappointed, okay? So they're subsidizing the most valuable member, which are the first people who will drive all day on Uber. Or this company called Helix, right? So you put in, you get your genetic test, and then you're supposed to buy all sorts of things because of that data. It's a marketplace of things to buy based on your genetic data. Okay, well, the genetic test costs $600, but they only charge $900, or they cost $400, they only charge $99. So they're subsidizing the most important part of the marketplace, which is the consumer demand side. Right? So that's another company. ClassPass, right? These guys were going to the exercise clubs in various cities, and they would just pay the money. Say, sign up with me at an exclusive for 2 years, and be on no other platforms, and I'll pay you 10 grand, 20 grand. I'll just pay you right up front. They subsidized. And then DoorDash was doing the same, where they would just pay people to drive around until, so a lot of companies have done that. Right, number 4, making the supply look bigger with automation. So Yelp went out and just scraped and had a lot of people phone call them to create profiles of all the companies in a local area, so that when you landed there, at least you would you'd see them listed, even if there were no ratings. Okay? So Yelp looked more active than it was at the beginning because they had a big data collection effort by looking at what was out there. Indeed scraped all of the job listings. So you would go to Indeed and you'd be overwhelmed. And there's 150,000 job openings for your searches. They didn't put any of those up there. They were just scraping the web. And so you always had the supply side for Indeed whenever you got there. Goodreads did the same thing. They imported the whole database of every book that had ever been published in the United States, so that when you got there, at least there was the name, the IPD number, the author's name, the date it was published, all that stuff was there, and it just came from a database. We built a marketplace too, not really yet, but NFX is building software to help people fundraise. So we've gone out and collected all the data on the VCs. We've got 6,600, we actually added, I think, 3,800 VCs. We're now up to 6,600 because people came and said, wow, there's already 3,800 VCs here, I'll add my profile as well. Okay, so that's how we kickstarted the supply side of the Signal marketplace for fundraising. Okay? This gives you an aura of activity when you do something like this with data. Now, speaking of aura, let me get to what I call number 4.5. I'm not giving it a whole one because I can't give it too much credibility, but this whole idea of faking activity. All right, so should you fake activity or not? Well, Match.com, famously, has made many profiles of women to attract the demand side, the people who normally pay on Match.com. They've done this from the beginning. They continue to do this. It's not particularly ethical to do this sort of thing, but it happens. Reddit has admitted that when they were getting going, they actually had people create fake accounts, ask really interesting questions, and then have other fake people answer those questions to try to lead the community to understand what sort of things the founders wanted to happen on Reddit. And this went on for the first year or two, actually, as they, just like eBay, added new categories on Reddit. All right? They've admitted that. YouTube had fake accounts upload pirated content. The best pirated content. Movie clips, TV clips, things that people couldn't get anywhere else because it was violating copyright. But under the laws at that time, if they were just a platform, they weren't going to get sued, blah, blah, blah. When they sold for $1.6 million, Google escrowed $600 million of that and paid that out for copyright infringement. All of that money was paid out to the companies that had been infringed, like Fox and Universal Studios. So they faked it. And then they made it. And then, of course, PayPal has also admitted to the fact that they would get on eBay and they would buy a product and say, but I'll only take, I'll only be able to pay you with PayPal. So if you want my money, you have to get an account on PayPal. And they employed hundreds of people to do that for months, to try to teach the supply that they should have PayPal accounts and then request that money come to them through PayPal to get the whole thing going. So 4.5, it doesn't have its own number actually. Number 5, so building one side as an email list. Famously, this is how Craigslist started. He just had an email list to his friends saying, hey, there's an apartment for rent, oh, there's a car for sale, oh, there's a party this weekend. And then people said, hey, Craig, can you put this in your email list and send it out to your list of 2,000 friends? And he said, sure. And from that, Craigslist was born. Threadless did the same thing. They got an email list of people who were buying t-shirts, and here's the new design, and isn't this interesting? And more people signed up for this hip, urban, cool email, and then they built a website, and off they went to the marketplace. It's another good way to go. Very underlooked. Physical parties, right? Doing things that don't scale. So Poshmark does Plush Parties, where they throw these parties and people come, generally women will come and exchange used clothing at these Plush Parties. They'll build relationships. They will also stand there next to each other and create listings that will then go up on Poshmark, the website. But this community building and this relationship building then led to lots of social media, which then led to lots of downloads and the feeling that people wanted to be in this community and participate. Okay? Yelp famously threw some great parties in 2004 and 2005. Everyone got drunk, everyone had a great time, and went away feeling very positive about Yelp and feeling like they wanted to be, Yelp elite and actually be some of the people rating on the website. And it was very effective and really fun for the founders. So this can be a great tactic. Most physical parties for most marketplaces don't work. It doesn't scale enough. But doing a few and then being really loud about it on social media can help build that feeling of community and give you some really intense users of your product. Number 7, building a tool for one side. Now, a lot of people are doing this, and this is a really good way to go. Whether it's OpenTable building the software for the restaurants, or HoneyBook building the software for the event planners, and now all of the creative freelancers in the US, Patreon building a tool for the creatives to then get paid through, StyleSeat building software for the hairdressers, and then Outdoorsy building software for the RV rental companies, the mom and pops around the country, so they can run their business. Once you are locking in one side of the supply by giving them a SaaS tool, whether it's the demand or the supply, it makes managing the other side much easier and managing your revenue from that. Okay, so this is something you're going to see a lot of going forward. It's really just, OpenTable was really kind of the first demonstration of it about 15, 20 years ago, and others are picking up on it as we go. Here's another interesting one that where you give software not to the supply or the demand, but actually to a third party that is then going to bring you one of the supply. So MySpace gave band profiles to bands and let them reach out to their audiences through MySpace. They didn't have a band-centric software platform before. Those people then went out and brought in a lot of users to the MySpace platform. All right. Another example of that would be Android, right? Android said, hey, you're all scared of iOS, aren't you, manufacturers of cell phones? Well, you should be, but here is some software. Why don't you go out and get us the consumers, and then when you do, we'll take 30% of that revenue. Thank you very much. All right, pretty clever. Pretty clever. Number 9, you can find one giant user on one side or the other. And an example of that would be a company like Candex, which is supplying software to a large corporation like Siemens, and then Siemens has tens and hundreds of thousands of vendors they need to pay outside the platform, and then Siemens says, if you want us to pay you, you need to be on Candex. Okay? But this is often very hard. Another tactic for the chicken and egg problem is to make sure that one side, at least one side, doesn't have to change any of their behavior. A great example of this is Square. I, as the consumer, am swiping my credit card at a store. I just want to swipe it at a flea market, but I can't because there's no Square. Now there's Square. And so this was a really easy way for
Square to onboard the demand side of the market when there were 17 other venture-backed companies all trying to build these payment platforms, and they all failed because everyone on both sides was trying to change behavior. In this case, only the merchant had to change behavior. Number 11, suddenly make something free that wasn't. Napster made music free. Everyone jumped on board. Robinhood is making trading free and just raised money at a $5.6 billion valuation after, I don't know, 4 years or something. So making something free suddenly that wasn't free before, because the value people have in their heads is going to drive them to come to your service and kickstart your marketplace. Number 12, you make the product yourself first. You start as a manufacturer or as a retailer, and then you open the marketplace later. Salesforce builds a CRM tool, and then after 10 years opens Force and becomes a marketplace where other B2B software vendors can sell through the Force platform. Amazon obviously started with their own shipping centers, with their own retail outlets, and then they opened up Marketplace, and it's now 50% of all their transactions are coming through the Marketplace, right? Not through their centers. iPhone made the first 32 apps on the platform, and then opened up the SDK so we could all build apps for them. Smart Recruiters, a great company invested in by Tim Chang's Mayfield company. They started out with a tool that allowed people to post their job postings on multiple boards, on multiple marketplaces for jobs, just as a tool. And once they had everyone using that tool, they opened up a marketplace, and now it's a big marketplace. It's companies selling software into HR departments, okay? And another example would, of course, be Tesla. They put out their own charging stations so that when, which was really the supply side of the market, so that your car could drive across the United States. And now that they're selling so many electric cars, they're hoping that other people start putting up these charging stations as well. So they're seeding that side of the marketplace. Number 13, connecting the two sides by hand. Famously, people would order stuff on Zappos. They'd get in their car. They'd drive to the shoe store. They'd buy it. They'd put it in a box. They'd drive to the post office. They'd send it. And that's what they did for the first several months, actually. And this is the best example of what we say at NFX, which is to manufacture excellent initial transactions. Right? Those first 100, those first 10,000 transactions need to be manufactured with great care so that everyone on both sides reports back, hey, this thing's great, you should go there. All right? Another way of doing the chicken and egg is to actually not have a chicken or egg, just make it a chicken selling to chickens, right? You just make it a one-sided marketplace. So Poshmark, the majority of people who are selling their used fashion on Poshmark are actually buying used fashion on Poshmark. So every time they get a new member, they're getting both sides of the marketplace. It's a lot easier to do the marketing for a company like that. Same thing is true of Etsy. And of course, we've talked about Match.com in the past. They, you bring one person in, they're both a buyer and a seller of their services, all right? Number 15, you can create exclusive access. This is something that most founders think they want to do, which is, I'm going to make this so cool that everyone's going to run to my thing. This almost never works, okay? It worked for Guilt for a while. It certainly worked for Gmail and for Mailbox, but it's really hard to pull off, but it can work, and it usually starts with a really viral video. So that would be my tactical tip on that. Spend the $3,000 to $5,000 to see if you can come up with a tactical video that's going to get viral. Give it a shot. If it doesn't work, move on. This is very rare. This is very rare. And don't let your team convince you that you're going to be cool and that's why everyone's going to come. Okay, number 16. We're going to move fast because we're getting near the end. But number 16, geographic constraint, right? By limiting the area in which you're operating when you start, you can actually get a lot more activity going because the surface area of attack that you need to apply yourself to is so much smaller. All right? So looking at a geographic constraint and enforcing one, even if your business doesn't need it, can be a good idea to solving the chicken or egg problem. Time constraint. Again, this marketplace top hatter, when they first started, they're saying, hey guys, you can download our app, but you can only bid and buy from this marketplace between 8 and 9 p.m. EST. And so everyone would wait until, and then they'd hop on at 8 p.m. And then because there was, there's only 80 buyers and 14 sellers, but you felt like the room was full. Because everyone during the day wasn't coming in and seeing no one there. They were all on during that 1 hour. And so there was excitement. It was a great way to solve the chicken or egg problem. The amount constraint, Groupon. They had so many coupons, but they only gave you one a day. They could have given you 20, and there would have been plenty of people in the organization who would have said, why don't we just put up a web page? Then people can get the coupons anytime they want. Won't we sell more? The answer is no, because they constrained it down to one Groupon a day, and so everyone knew what they were dealing with. All right? Fiverr, you can only buy something for $5. Well, what's the price? Well, it's $5. Well, can I make it another price? Wouldn't we sell more if we allowed people to have other prices? Not at the beginning. Now, after 7 years, Fiverr has opened up, and it's things for $5 and more, or something like that. But for the first 7 years, they constrained it, and that gave it an identity, that gave it a reason for people to be there, it gave it a simplicity, increased their conversion rates. So through constraint, you actually build speed. Number 19, paying users with tokens. This is a new one. I know some of you in the audience like this. Companies like OpenBazaar and WeMark. OpenBazaar is doing a marketplace for everything. WeMark is doing a marketplace for photography, so taking on Shutterstock. And basically the way this works is that in most marketplaces, no one wants to join until everyone is there. So as your motivation to join will increase over time as long as the activity goes up. But the activity takes a while to ramp up. Right? So with OpenTable, they couldn't open the marketplace for 7 years. It just took a long time. Well, with these tokens, you can just pay people. That will be their motivation at the beginning because there is no activity. And then over time, as the activity ramps up, the amount you have to pay them decreases, and then hopefully your token value stays the same or goes up, and then you're wealthy, and that's how you're a rent seeker, even though you're pretending you're not a rent seeker, and you really are. So that's all very well and good. I've shown you 19 tactics that we've got on our list at NFX about how you solve the chicken or egg problem, or if you have a working marketplace, how you accelerate and amplify your marketplace from where it is today. That's all very well and good, but you still need to get people to your website. So you've got these tactics to help them once they're there, but how do you get them there? I'm not going to go into great detail, but I do want to point out that when you're looking at free growth channels, it's very, if you look back over the last 15 years, the free growth channels are really declining. Those who own those channels have figured out how to lock them down and make us pay for it. So there's a lot of the free and viral social channels, there's only a few left. That's the nice news. It's not an infinite complexity. Right? There's only a short list of places for you to turn to learn how to bring new people to your website for free. All right? Of these, I feel like word of mouth and doing something extraordinary and doing good SEO are probably still our best bets in terms of bringing free traffic in. Okay? At the same time, the number of options to buy traffic are increasing, and so paid advertising is becoming more important. And similarly, there's only a limited number of places to go for this that you can do at any scale. Now, there's lots of little places you can go, but when you're looking to build a big business, you've got to convince yourself and you've got to convince your investors that you've got a place where you can go to get a nearly infinite number of people or businesses to participate in your marketplace. And so you need to look for scalable paid platforms, not little niche ones. Okay? 19 tactics for your chicken or egg problem. Whole bunch of channels to bring people to a website. And the last thing I want to say is all of that will mean nothing if you don't actually build a culture of growth in your company. And there's only 4 points that I want to make about this. That in your culture, you have to be willing to sustain the pain of failure and iterate relentlessly, because you're going to probably try 6 or 8 of these different chicken or egg tactics, and most of them will fail. And then you're going to try 6 or 7 of these different growth channels, and most of them will fail. And so if you don't have, and if you don't teach your company employees to have, to be able to sustain the pain of failure, then you will eventually fail. You must be patient as you go through the attempts to do this. You're going to have to be willing to push the boundaries. Remember Rule 4.5. And really, it's not a one-time gimmick. It's unlikely you're going to find one thing that's going to work. You're going to have to find multiple things that are going to work. All right? It's a philosophy. So we publish a lot of this kind of stuff at NFX Essays. Feel free to sign up for the email. Thank you very much.